Assalamu alaikum, good morning, and welcome to the last episode of Reset with your host Nadeem Khan. Today is a special day because we are ending the first season for Reset. The primary objective for Reset was for people who are suffering during the COVID. We wanted them to not only survive but to thrive during this pandemic and move out of the pandemic with flying colors. Just to give you a brief intro for today's session, we have an amazing guest who is the last guest today. Before I introduce him, the topic for the guest is corporate entrepreneurship, or as we will also look at entrepreneurship, its benefits for the future of work, and how organizations, all the things that we've talked about, how organizations are evolving through the digital workplace and the new normal, which we've come to know. So just to give you a brief recap what the series has been about, we started off with mental toughness, understanding how you can meditate and improve your mindset. The second session was about finding your passion. The third was about the career trajectories that are changing in the industries. The third was about embracing technology. The fifth was about resetting your skills and having different skill set that led us towards understanding management and leadership. And after that, we had the seventh session, which was around purpose-driven leadership. How do you find your purpose in life? And yesterday, we talked about relationships and the importance of relationships during the digital culture and how these will unfold in the future. And today, we are going to be talking about corporate entrepreneurship. And that is where I would like to introduce our guest for today. His name is none other than Dr. Moiz Saleem Khan. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Moiz. So he has over almost a decade of work experience in the pharmaceutical, biotech, medical devices, and consumer healthcare industry. He has worked across the globe. He's traveled. He travels frequently. He has facilitated high-impact teams in several departments, including sales, trade, marketing, brand management, product development, business development, medical and regulatory affairs, which is intellectual property and patents, something that is very close to the work that I do around intangibles. And his research in his MBA also revolves around this, which we're going to talk about. He's currently he's a doctorate of pharmacy, certified supply chain analyst from the International Supply Chain Education Alliance, and a member of the Chartered Institute of Marketing. He's also an MBA in general management from Loughborough University, and he has completed an advanced management program, AMP, from Adam Smith Business School, University of Glasgow in Scotland. Let me welcome Dr. Moiz Saleem Khan. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Moiz. How are you? Sorry. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Moiz. How are you?
Walaikum salam.
Sorry, I had your voice paused. Sorry about that. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Pleasure to have you on our show today. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for the introduction. Not done too much, but it's a very long introduction from your side. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We had to cut 2-3 paragraphs out of that. Just for the audience to know that, mashallah, you've achieved a lot in such a young age, mashallah. So hats off to you. And I think the reason for inviting you today is because the industry is changing. We have given probably an introduction of what Reset is about. And a lot of the people are wondering what corporate entrepreneurship is, and entrepreneurship as just to give you a brief background. Whilst I was in Pakistan in 2015, I did start off with an organization by the name of Entrepreneur, and a lot of people didn't understand the concept at this point in time. And I think in the last 5 years, a lot has gone into entrepreneurship and understanding the concept. So could you briefly outline to the audience what we mean by corporate entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship in as brief and as as layman terms as you can? Thank you.
Yeah. I'll do that. To be honest, I'll be whatever you said before was true, 100% true. That people didn't understand entrepreneurship, corporate entrepreneurship, or entrepreneurship, and today even people don't understand it. So it's the same. Nothing has changed. The thing is that if you ask me in layman terms, I would say it would be the ownership, or taking your responsibility of taking a decision of your future, about your business or about your career. So
Okay.
you're taking the ownership of your business decision making, or for your career or something like that. That would be the most appropriate layman language
Okay.
to do that.
So in the past, we used to rely on the HR to give us a promotion, and we used to think that the HR will make a trajectory for us. And what you're saying is corporate entrepreneurship nullifies all that. It means that you need to be very proactive. It means that you need to be a go-getter. You need to work as a very proactive member, as a very proactive, I'd say, part of the organization, like a partner, like a strategic business partner. That's what you're trying to say.
Exactly.
Okay,
So
so yes.
you're actually responsible for what you're going to do today. You're going to be responsible for tomorrow. There's a very good saying, every man is responsible for his own destiny. So this is what even entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship, both of these things are the same. Because I'm talking to an entrepreneur right now, you know what I'm talking about when I'm saying that, you know the days when they pass by, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but
Yes.
your inner side feels that, what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to be responsible for it.
Okay. Okay.
If you get my point, right?
So the initial term intrapreneur and entrepreneur, let's just clarify the concept before we go further into the new normal and the skills that are required. Intrapreneur means someone who's working inside an organization and acting like an entrepreneur. That is the general definition of intrapreneur. That's that's the understanding for people out there, that now people, in order for organizations to really want you to be working for them, you need to be an entrepreneur, because you need to create that value for organizations. And this is where a lot of people have struggled, because they've been acting busy and doing nothing. And people have realized that you don't need an office, you don't need a 9 to 5 place to clock in. You need to have performance indicators that we've talked about earlier before the show a lot of the times, that if you have KPIs set, if you know where the business is going, you are bound to excel and bound to give the business a lot of things that are required, like performance, for that matter of fact. Now you've worked with a host of industries across the medicine, and now you're working in R&D. Can you tell us, and you mashallah, you've worked global as well. So what are the skill sets, with the new normal? Can you explain, firstly, before I ask the skill set, do you think that the world is going to go back to how it was before? And do you think that people should wait for things to normalize? Is there something like the past that has gone back, or is this the new normal? Can you give us your interpretation of that?
I think this is going to be the new normal now. There's no going back.
Why?
Things have changed, and it's just that, to be honest, a person like me, I was screaming in the corporate world for like last 5 years that you should be changing, but they weren't interested. To be honest, they weren't interested to listen to a lot of stuff, but they just wanted to go according to this is the SOP. You should just follow it. Being a corporate entrepreneur, you're always challenging things. But now, when things have, got out of hand, this is now they've realized, oh yeah, people were saying that, or and they weren't listening. What I'm trying to tell you is that at the moment, the C-level executive is mostly the baby boomers at the moment, which are working on, which we're working from. We're the zillennials or the millennials right now, because I'm talking marketing terms. So we were advising them that there's going to be, there's a gap in between the generation, which is going to come, and the generation which is actually in the C-suite right now. So, but now I think they have realized that this is how it's going to be. So it's going to be a new normal. This is going to be a new normal.
Okay.
Short, yeah.
And with this new normal, what do you think are the skills that are required for people who are watching, for people who are interested? What are the specific skills? Seeing your profile, I think one of the things that comes to my mind and is being talked a lot about is lifelong learning. How can you ensure, there are two types of people. One person that just gets a lot of courses and just wants to do every course that he can get his hands on. What's the difference between a corporate entrepreneur or an entrepreneur and these are the people that I just talked about? Can you explain the difference between the skill sets or the mindset that is required for corporate entrepreneurship?
What I'm hearing right now is that a lot of people are talking about skills and not talking about education. They're saying that it's studying 4 years is better, just take a course and get the skill set which is required. So somehow I do agree and also disagree, both of them. Well, to be honest, if for the skill set, you had a very good session. I was listening to that. He's done a great job. So for that, you can revert back to the session which you've gone through with the skills. What I'm trying to say here is that an entrepreneur is actually a mindset. It's not a skill. So for an entrepreneur, you have to have the mindset of an entrepreneur. It's not a skill set.
Okay.
So I think I've managed to answer your question. If you understand, it's not a skill set; it's a mindset.
Okay, so how do we create that mindset? How do you, let's say if I give you an example, if tomorrow you're, now this would be for an audience question. If I'm applying to an organization and I'm probably, I've completed my undergrad and master's and you're hiring me, what are the skills that you're looking for people who you're hiring? And I would say, what are the mindset and how do you gauge that? Is it through the CV? Is it through the interview? Is it through conversations? How do you gauge that? Can you give an example of someone who you've hired, someone from the team in previous working, and you know that this guy is a corporate entrepreneur, and how do you flourish that? Can you give us a good big example of what? How do you identify corporate entrepreneurs?
With a corporate entrepreneur, I would be seeking that I don't have to tell him what to do, but I would be, if he's coming in, he's going to tell me what we have to do.
Amazing.
Do you get my point?
Yeah. But how do you? So how do you identify if there's with HR, with recruitment, especially? I wouldn't say HR, but I would say recruitment. You have a ton of CVs aligned, and you've got 10 people. Let's say you're interviewing them. From the interview stage to the to the stage where you've inducted them to the training stage, through the management trainee stage. How do you identify what are the, for people to understand that you need to be doing this? So an example is you've given a task. Can you?
It's a simple question. What has he done in the past? It can be anything.
Okay. But do you think that your past can justify your future, or people can change? Do you have that as well?
It can, of course. Change can come at any time. But specifically, if you're asking for entrepreneurship, it's actually a mindset. So when you ask questions, when you're probing, you'll get to know things. For example, if you ask me that, what have you done before even I've graduated? What were you doing? So I'll say in my summer holidays, I used to invest in, there used to be summer galas, summer melas in our place, and we used to take stalls and we used to earn money. We had 500 rupees of pocket money. And what we used to do is that, if you invest 500 and we, somehow 4 friends try and get, some. So that's the mindset that, you somewhat thinking of business when you're actually 12, 11, 13 years old.
Okay. So it's a commercial mindset. It's a commercial mindset. And what you're saying is, if someone comes now, to elaborate further, if someone comes and doesn't know anything about the company and says, I'm very commercial, would you hire him?
Depends on the situation which you're hiring. It's I can't just give an answer for that, because there's a lot of things to see before hiring someone.
Okay.
Of course, because what are we hiring it for? Which position are we hiring him for? So that's one thing. I wouldn't say that we'll say no to that person, because the real world is that everything is commercialized. So
Yes.
if somehow he's working for the best of the organization, so why not? No,
Okay.
we can only say yes to that person.
Okay. And how do you become more commercial? What are the tactics, or what are the strategies, or the mindset? How do you become more commercial? Can you give us an example of becoming more commercial, working within an organization? Do you think there are some tips for people watching?
Actually, for that you have to be creative and figurative at the same time. So you have to do something different what the market is doing. That would be the creative part, and the figurative part, that you should know your numbers.
Okay, so you're talking about two things. You're talking about being creative enough to probably engage other people and understand the wider business and how it functions, and also the financials, which we've talked about earlier, are around being more commercial and understanding the bottom line of the business, the key indicators of how the business is run. So I think to sum up that, it means that corporate entrepreneurs understand that cash is the lifeblood of an organization, and they give their heart and soul to bring the cash in.
Exactly.
Another thing that I've realized is that corporate entrepreneurs are basically those individuals who are getting this cash into the business, who are in the front line. They're the firefighters of the business. Do you agree or do you disagree with that?
It's not supposedly, they won't be the front line of the firefighters in every case. Well, I'll give you an example. It's a very good example. Whoever wants to be an entrepreneur or a corporate entrepreneur who's listening in your views, first of all, what they have to do is that they have to decide that which department of the company they work in.
Okay.
Because if you're the CEO, there's a specific department who's earning money, and for different industries, there are different departments. So he has to work in the line of fire.
Okay.
Do you understand? For some industries, the line of fire is the supply chain. For some industries, the line of fire is the sales department. For some industries, it's the corporate sales. For some industries, it's the clientele. For some industries, it will be production. For example, the R&D. So whichever industry you're working in, first of all, you have to decide that you have to work in that specific department. If you're not working, shift into that department. What I've seen that when I used to work in my past, there were a lot of MBA students, and they were working in support departments. They were in my industry, but they were working in support departments. And then they were asking me that, give us an advice. What should we do? Our MBA is going to finish in 6 months or 3 months, and we're looking for jobs. And they were, because everybody wants to earn money, but they're thinking that So the advice which I used to say is that go into that department in which you will be in the line of fire. If you understand that you can get fired for doing something. So first of all, you have to decide that.
Okay. So I read a book a long time ago. I think it's been almost I'd say 5 odd years. It's called The Rainmaker. Yeah. And in The Rainmaker, I'm not recalling the author, but if you Google The Rainmaker, you'd find the name of the author. And the author said that you need to work in a department that brings money, that brings sales into the business. And this is exactly what you're saying in terms where you're saying that the corporate entrepreneur works in that department that brings sales or money influx to the business. And that is the department that is the area where you learn the most, where change happens very frequently, where you need to upgrade, upskill yourself. And that is probably the area where you learn the most, where you evolve the most, and where you can grow the most. You've seen most CEOs start their career with sales.
Exactly.
Am I right? And that is the trajectory. Even if they've studied, let's say, supply chain or other places, but they want to start off with sales. They want to go in go in the field. And now the field is evolving, right? Now there's a question. Now there's a question, because this is the new normal. How do you think that business sales and all these other concepts of product development, as you know, you've worked in product development, how will they evolve? Are they going to be are they going to be developed the way they were, or is something going to change around sales and product development?
It depends on that. What the requirement is. Whatever the requirement is, if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to shift to that requirement. So there is going to be a change, of course. I'll just give you an example. For example, in dentistry, because you know you're very close to your patients when you're doing something. So they now have a glass, and then you can put your hand inside, and because you can't have contact because of COVID. So you know there's an innovation coming in. A lot of GPs are now taking online. They're consulting their patients online. So there is a lot of changes happening. So you're getting if you don't have any problem in which you can't meet, so they're just meeting the patient online, just as if we're having a call right now. So this is the new normal at the moment.
Okay, and you're saying that with all of this, we as human beings need to accustom ourselves with all these digital technologies that are taking place, and need to be proactive in learning them, rather than the organization, rather than vice versa, because a lot of people are being laid off because they don't have that skill set. So if you already have that skill set, if you're already ready for the future, you've got the readiness to kind of act when something like this happens, or more or less, because this is the new normal. So you took the initiative of actually learning and changing yourself on the onset.
Yeah, I'll just say whatever you've said. I think you're on point. For an entrepreneurial mindset, you have to have 5 things. One is autonomy. The second is risk taking. The third is proactiveness. The fourth is aggressiveness. And the fifth thing is innovation.
Okay.
If you have 5 things,
yeah,
with whatever we talked about, you're an entrepreneur.
Okay. Can you take us through these 5 things, and I'll note them down as well for the conclusion. Can you take us through these 5 things, please?
As I mentioned, you have to have autonomy, ownership, responsibility of your own. Then we were taking that, you have to be a risk taker. So you have to be risk taking. And as you mentioned that, you have to be proactive before time. You have to be active. We already discussed all these things. And we have to have a certain amount of aggressiveness towards our goals, achieving our goals. And the fifth thing is innovation.
Okay.
You need to have an innovative mind to be.
Okay. So autonomy, a lot of people would argue that my employer doesn't give me autonomy, right? So do you think that the culture also matters? For you to be a corporate entrepreneur, you need to be working in the right culture, because there's a mindset called Sate mindset, which is you report to. That's probably a very patriarchal or very I'd say a bureaucratic mindset, where you need to be reporting into one individual, and without their decision, nothing happens. So do you think these organizations, I'm talking now not about the individual, but the organizations, they have a lot of say in creating a culture? And I do work with a lot of leadership in this area, where, we're changing. There's a very good saying that leadership and culture are part of the same coin. Do you agree? Can you highlight something around that? Autonomy and organizational culture.
You're truly right that most of the time the boss is in my saying, I'll say that boss is always right. You have to go with this, and it's totally right that you can't do anything without your boss.
Okay.
Me being an entrepreneur, I had challenged a lot of things, either it be the purchase department, supply chain, the travel related services. If something got delayed or something like that, I always had my boss in loop. So first of all, if I'm answering the question, you have to keep your boss in loop for everything. You
Okay.
you have all the autonomy, but you can't go against your boss or the top management.
Okay.
Okay. The second thing that you were asking about the culture. Yes, there needs to be a culture for corporate entrepreneurship. Uh, what will happen is that if there's not a culture of corporate entrepreneurship, people will leave.
Okay.
Good entrepreneurs will leave your organization.
Okay.
So they will work because they'll have a purpose for working. They'll get that purpose out and then leave. Switch.
Okay.
Do you get my point?
Yes.
They,
Okay.
they will be there until they benefit. And in their benefit, the company also benefits.
Yes, but once their purpose once they're not purpose driven, they will be searching for another job. So we've talked about autonomy, which is related to culture. Risk taking also, obviously, I've worked for many organizations in Pakistan, and we see that even though whether it's a multinational or a local FMCG or other places, once an organization grows, there are certain, I would say, SOPs, certain ways of doing things. And I think corporate entrepreneurs are always challenging those things. I've made a very short video about this as well on our YouTube channel around, why, you not necessarily always have to create an SOP to be followed. And that also, the impact it has on innovation. Do you think for corporate entrepreneurship, it's like how something's stuck just right here? If you have an SOP and you want to break that rule, do you think they do that on purpose, or do you think they can see beyond what other people can't see?
I think it's both of the things. They do it on purpose also.
Okay.
And they're seeing things beyond. The sentence which I've heard the most is that when I used to be doing some things, someone sitting beside me or a colleague just used to say, "This hasn't happened before," or "You can't do that."
Yeah.
And that's the motivation which I got. I said, "Now I'll do it. Now I'll tell you how I can do it."
Yes, and I think a lot of seniors, they've had this, this can't happen, we can't do this, and that mindset and that attitude, if you're working for a manager, especially, that kind of brings you down and says, since it's never happened, we can't do it. And that's not true, because if you're not gonna go out, invest your time and look for a solution, you're never going to find one. And that's not the way organizations flourish and nourish and innovate. And I think that's what kills innovation. But if you've got entrepreneurs, corporate entrepreneurs, you're bound to innovate. So I think the risk taker is directly parallel to innovation, because obviously you are doing something new, and that's what innovation is, incremental innovation. So I think proactive and aggressiveness you've talked about. Now, this is probably a male dominant category, where you say, you have high testosterone. But do you feel that females also can have these qualities and aspects?
I think females are more creative than men.
Okay. What about aggressiveness?
I used to say that in future I'll be seeing more of females in the job which I am doing, because I always felt that they're more creative than me. For me, I had to call someone from a vendor or something, to make something creative. But people who are females who are working with me, the colleagues, they were so creative at their own. It's just an example. If for me, this would be like, a black color or a dark blue color. And if you ask a female, she'd tell you, this is this color. And like, okay. So they're creative by birth, yeah.
Yeah, even in the black shade, they've got like 10 black shades.
Yeah.
So it's good to understand that some of the strengths that we have and some of the strengths that females have, I think the collaboration is always important. And I think that currently leads to innovation. So I think from the conversation, what I've picked up are a couple of more things, which is communication, both upward and downward. That links back to autonomy, but I would give it another, these add-ons. Apart from, you've talked about autonomy, risk-taking, proactiveness, aggressiveness, and innovation. I'd also talk about communication, the importance of taking people, having that team essence and having that communication or conversations. We've talked about this in previous sessions as well. Being a critical.
Understand for the viewing, we're putting up an ideal case in which the skill set is constant. So we're assuming that a person has all the skill sets, maybe negotiation skills, leadership skills. So because of the viewers which are seeing, what we're seeing is that he has all the skill sets, but now we're only talking about the entrepreneurial mindset. So that would make it more clear. So he's gone through all the 8 phases which we've gone through in your sessions, but now we're specifically talking about the entrepreneurial mindset. For that, he needs these 5 points.
Okay.
So he has the negotiation skills, leadership skills. We're not talking about the skills, but we're specifically talking about the
mindset. Okay. So apart from those that we've covered earlier, which is communication, critical thinking, and purpose driven, I've also looked at systems thinking and I think financial indicators that you mentioned, looking at the business from a very financial perspective. Mm-hmm. We've hit probably the 30-minute mark, but if there are any questions from the audience, please feel free to ask us questions, and then we can proceed further with the session, and then we'd want to close, inshallah. So I think just to sum up the whole reset for the people who are watching. Now, initially we did talk about reflecting and trying to understand your strengths. In all the different sessions that we've seen, we have not kind of categorized that these are the skill sets that you need. What we've tried to do is we've tried to say, okay, so look at what your strengths are. Look at strength finders, look at evaluating yourself as individuals, and then look at the skill sets that you need to improve, right? I'm not saying that you're really bad at something and you want to do that, but improve at an area where your strengths lie. So if you like selling, we'd want you to go into selling. And if you like, let's say, working in operations or working in a creative department, work in that department, because that's what floats your boat, right? Not necessarily that you have to be a corporate entrepreneur, or you have to, be a sales guy or saleswoman for that matter of fact. But, if you're purpose driven, if you're passion driven, find your passion, find your purpose in life. And I think that's what we've all talked about. And being at home is very difficult. We've talked about relationships. We've talked about all these other issues. So we have a comment. We have a comment on our YouTube. How do you manage risk? There's someone called TK. How do you manage risk as an organization, team, and individual? How do you manage risk? That's a question.
What kind of risk has he mentioned anything regarding what kind of risk?
No, I'm not sure whether it's a he or a she, but it's TK. There's no name attached to it, but he says the person says, how do you manage risk as an organization, team, and individual? That's a YouTube comment that we have.
Okay.
Now, risk can be, I would term, from my perspective, I term risks as intangible risk. Any risk, let's say, when you were talking about your research, you did talk about intangible risk, which is human capital, intellectual capital, and commercial risk that you have. How do you manage that? Do you have any idea how you can share that with us?
Well, to be honest, when we're taking any we're quite calculative about it. That before taking a risk, there's a lot of analysis being involved before taking any risk or a before taking any decision making. I couldn't understand the question that what kind of risk is he
I would
talking?
can I if I paraphrase this question as for you as an entrepreneur or a corporate entrepreneur, how do you manage risk when you're taking a decision? How do you manage risk as an individual? Do you go out and do a market survey? Do you study something? Do you do what exactly do you do?
Well, it's all part of when we're doing all the analysis for a specific market or a specific product. So it comes within that. This is what it's going to be if we're going to take this decision. This is what it can lead to, and this is what the benefits are. So it's always like benefit versus risk. So that's how we manage it.
Mm.
And
I think there was an amazing quote by Gary Vee yesterday, and he says the data tells me about the past. The data tells me about the past, and intelligence tells me about the future. Right? It was something like this. I'm indirectly quoting him, and I think risk is minimized by systems thinking, looking at the wider business, looking at the wider data. For your answer, as a corporate entrepreneur, I've always seen you look at the wider picture, look at different industries and how they're performing. Look at not just different industries, look at different competitors, your market, and I think that's something that I've learned from you. It's safe to say that that looking at different industries, looking at different businesses, and then taking a decision rather than saying, having a blindfold and saying this is what we need to do. And I think that's where God has gifted human beings with intelligentsia or intelligence to make that decision, to have that leap of faith, and that's what entrepreneurship is all about. That gut feeling, that that foresight, that the decision that I'm going to take will impact the business in X, Y, or Z form. And that's probably how you minimize risk, through intelligence, and obviously through a lot of preparation, through a lot of expertise that are built over and over that course of a lifespan. And you can say you have a decade of experience winning or losing or taking those decisions, and that's how you probably minimize team, both on an organization, team, and individual level. Sometimes I even can't explain why I'm making those decisions, because you have that inside your brain. There is no algorithm for it. People are trying to replicate it, but how far are they? Being in a people analytics expert, I can tell you that how far are people trying to replicate what the brain can or is trying to do, right? Trying to create people algorithms, machine learning algorithms, trying to create and simplify these algorithms, which are very complex in nature. So we're not there yet, right? So I think we end up with this note for today, and for the users, for not just users but for the listeners to take, is that intelligence is the highest form of I think is a blessing that is in disguise, given to all of us, and we should be using that with gratitude, with faith, and nurturing it in the future. And I think that's what we need to reflect on, and we need to reset the way that we've been doing things and the way that we will look into the future, and we would go into the future. Thank you so much, Dr. Moiz, for joining us. If you have any further comments, please, can we know how people can join you? What are the platforms that people can search you on and look?
I'm quite reachable. I'm on LinkedIn, so if they inbox me, I'll be happy to reply them back.
Right, and I think Moiz has a tremendous journey, corporate journey, and traveled the globe, and he's frequently helps a lot of people out with their journeys. He's also studying. He consistently studies, and he's got a very dynamic background with supply chain, medicine, general management, and leadership as well. So and research, that is an important aspect for corporate entrepreneurs. They're constantly researching. So anyone who wants to reach out to Moiz, he's reachable on LinkedIn. I wish you all the best for your future. Thank you so much for joining us. And for the listeners, please, there's a viewer, Amna Mukri. She says, "Great discussion." Thank you, Amna. Thank you for that.
What I would like to say is that whoever wants to go through the pathway of corporate entrepreneurship, they should follow on innovation. That's the need of the day. So if you're working as a corporate entrepreneur, do advise your top management to innovate. That's the need of the day, because if we stop innovating, we'll end up in a crisis, which we are in right now.
Yes.
So the main thing is that, the fifth point, which I'm saying, it's innovation.
Yes, I'd like to add something.
If you're doing your job 30%, you should be focusing on innovation. 70% of your job, 30% of your innovation. Because the topic wasn't corporate entrepreneurship as a strategy, I didn't discuss more of strategy, how we're going to implement it. It was more of a single individual who wants to be a corporate entrepreneur.
Yes.
So we only discussed the entrepreneurial mindset. So, and of course, I was listening to all the sessions. You've managed to conclude everything in it: the skills gap, the leadership skills, the relationship. So we didn't go on that. We were just talking about the mindset. And in 20 minutes of time, we can only talk about that. Anything else which people want to know about corporate entrepreneurship?
I think with innovation, I'd like to add, I was interviewing the CEO of Brompton Bikes for our book, which is the Introduction to People Analytics, which people can go on, Kogan Page. It's published by Kogan Page. So what he says, and we've quoted that, is innovation should be incremental. So it means that you're not supposed to be radical enough, because radical innovation requires a lot of money, right? And your bosses won't let you do that. What incremental innovation is, for people to understand that incremental innovation is just 1 degree of the normal. And when you calculate that 1 degree, you're actually doing that innovation. And the reason for telling people that is, everything that needs to be developed has been developed. The only thing you need to do is you need to innovate incrementally. You need to be looking at a tangent, looking at from an entrepreneurial mindset that Dr. Moiz has talked about today, to be able to bring new blood into the business, new innovation into the business. And when you look at it, it will look entirely new, because you're combining lots of factors that have previously been innovated. So that is what incremental innovation is. So don't try too hard, because otherwise you will burn out and you'll say, we've wasted a lot of resources just trying to innovate. Because I've seen a lot of companies, all they're doing is innovating something new, then trashing the previous one, then trying to innovate, and then trashing the third and the fourth and the fifth. And that kind of leads them towards burnout, and all of their resources are depleted. So this is something that I wanted to add. The rest, you can obviously connect with Dr. Moiz, you can connect with me, and we will continue. So just to conclude, this is the first series of Reset. Looking at the feedback, we would want to invite further guests. So if you have any feedback for us, please do write to us. I'm available on LinkedIn. If there are other people who want to be part of the show, if there are other organizations who want us to host similar sessions, please reach out to us. This is the month of Ramadan. Do take care of yourselves, do pray, and do reflect. And as you know, all of these sessions are available. Do share them with your colleagues. Do spread the positivity during the pandemic. We all want to reset. So take this all in and reset to not only survive but thrive through the pandemic. This is your host, Nadeem Khan, signing off. Assalamu alaikum.